Hey, I'm James from Smoking Dead Barbecue, and today I'm doing an in-depth review of one of my favorite, but also my most misunderstood barbecue accessories. Now, when it comes to an accessory, it should really enhance the experience, not hinder it. But I've developed 3 topics that we're going to cover today. Answering some common questions that we have, do an in-depth product review, so unlike me, maybe you don't end up purchasing all of them to find the one that does what you need it, as well as answer the important question of, would I buy it again? So let's get started with the 3 most common questions that I receive when it comes to the MEATER. The first is all about connections or connection issues and misunderstandings. So we'll unpack this. The second most common question is the dome temperature or data point. I'm getting some information from the MEATER. I'm getting some information from my grill. Which one do I trust? How do I make sense of it? And the third most common question is about food temperatures and it maybe not making sense what you're seeing on the MEATER ambient versus again what you're seeing on your grill. So let's get started on our first topic, which is understanding the connections and the questions and challenges that you might be facing. Okay, so let's talk connections. And so there's one common theme here, whether you're using the original MEATER at $69, the MEATER Plus at $99, or a MEATER block starting at $349. They all share one thing in common, which is the probes. So the probes are identical across all 3 series. What the difference in the price and the functionality all comes down to the base and the docking station. So on the original MEATER, which I've now sold, so I want to thank MEATER, by the way, for sending me the products that I no longer have because I've been using the block exclusively for the last couple of years to make this video. Not sponsored, I'm not an employee of MEATER, but I do want to thank MEATER for providing these so I can make the video and answer the question. So starting with the original MEATER, the block is just a charging station. So the way that the connection works is the probe is where all the magic lies. So this is what's connecting to your smart device, whether that be Android or iPhone. The probe is connecting via Bluetooth to your device. So you have about a 30-foot radius that you can go and explore around your grill and your home. Again, if you have a large, thick ceramic Kamado like I do, or an offset, or you're going through a brick wall, all of these things, just like with any connected device, will start to impact your range beyond that 33 feet line of sight range that the probe has. Now, a way that you can hack that and take the least expensive MEATER offering at $69 and turn it into a connected everywhere is if you happen to have a spare device, whether it be a tablet or a smartphone, again, Android or iPhone, and install the MEATER app. If you keep that device kind of locked and tethered within that 30-foot radius, and that device can access your home Wi-Fi, you are off to the races with the MEATER cloud, and you can access your cook information from anywhere in the world. Now, you're not really maybe going to go on international business travel, but I will say all the time, I might be out cutting the lawn and I'll get an alert on my smartwatch letting me know that I need to tend to my fire, especially on the offset where, the fires, need to have wood added every 30 minutes. Or there's been times where I'm at the gym and I want to see how my brisket cook is coming along, and I can take a quick glance at the watch and keep track of what's going on. And that all works from having a probe connected to a smart device that you have that stays within that 33-foot range, and that is now acting as our bridge to the internet. So you can get away with that with the entry-level MEATER. So what do you get for going from $69 to $99 for the MEATER Plus? So you gain here is extra range. So the MEATER Plus, without the assistance of any spare device, jumps from 33 feet up to 165 feet range. And the way that that works, the probe is identical. Again, it's a Bluetooth connection, but it's connecting to a base station, which is also a Bluetooth repeater. So we've got the range from our probe to our base, and then from our base to our device. And this is giving us nearly 4 or 5 times more range in terms of where we can go and wander around without the need of an extra device. And by the same logic, why I ultimately found myself upgrading to the MEATER block is it's more expensive to have a spare device, a smartphone or a tablet, than it is the block itself. So the block eliminates the need to have that spare device. You don't need a spare smartphone or a spare tablet because it has Wi-Fi connection built right in. So the probe connects to the block, and the block connects to your home Wi-Fi, and you are now off to the races without the need to have an extra device or stealing your kid's device in the middle, and it works really well. In addition to that, you also get the 4 probes, which is handier than I would say I thought it was originally. So when we have guests coming over, we like our steaks medium rare. Some of our steaks like them medium well, or AKA ruined. Kidding. We still love you guys. But having 4 separate probes allows us to keep track of different cooks, different temperatures, and we got a lot on the go. Having those extra set of probes is really, really handy. So now that we understand the differences in connections and how you can eke more value out of any lineup, whether it be the entry level or the granddaddy here with the meter block, let's go into my number 2 and number 3 most asked questions. So I'm going to do a quick little demonstration for this next question, which is, should I trust the ambient temperature on my meter probe because it's telling me one thing, or should I trust my dome temperature? So for this illustration, I've set my Kamado Joe Big Joe up running 300 degrees indirect, and I've inserted my 4 probes into 4 potatoes. So I got 4 potato probes, which is, by the way, a great way if you want to get information on a different part of your grill and understand what's really going on, especially if you have a new grill like an offset or Kamado Joe, you want to understand where the hot spots, where the cool spots, and what's actually going on. This is a great way to get some information. So let me bring it nice and close. We'll drop these in on the 4 different levels that I've set up so we can get an understanding of what's accurate, the probe or our dome temperature. Okay, so I'll just move the grids out of the way, but I'll put probe number 1 on the bottom grid here, probe number 2 on the 2nd level, probe number 3 on the 3rd level, and probe number 4 on the 4th level. Let's close that up, and then we'll take a look at our temperatures in a few minutes once this is stabilized. Okay, I left the 4 meter probes inside of our grill for about 1 hour, and as you can see on the meter chart, some really interesting differences. So probe number 1 was all the way down low, probe number 4 was all the way up top, and so the one up top was almost at the same level as what our dome temperature gauge is, and they were sitting nearly identical to one another, plus or minus 2 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit. But as we work our way down to level 1, you see about a 40-degree Fahrenheit difference. And so to answer the question, is the ambient sensor accurate? A large part of this has to do with it's accurate, but where do we place it? If we put it right near our temperature gauge, we're in the same general neighborhood zip code, and we're going to get similar information as to what our dome is reading. If not, this is often a trigger for me to calibrate my dome gauge around spring and fall. So we go from winter to summer. That can throw off the manual dome gauge, and sometimes I've seen that off by 30 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And the meter has been one of the ways I think, something doesn't seem right here. I should check that by placing in boiling water and make the adjustment. But to come back to, is the meter probe accurate, we can see that there's a wide variety of temperatures inside our grill, about a 10% difference or 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and this is all in the exact same indirect setup. We could exacerbate this difference further by going with different level half moon deflectors and increase that difference all the way up over to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's important not to compare a picture of information at one place and try and say, you know, a picture that you've taken in a completely different area and say these two don't match, so therefore, you know, it's not accurate. They can both be accurate in their unique context in terms of where you place them. So one of the things that I always suggest doing for your ambient probe is, if you want to try and get a grill temperature, you can take your probe and go more at parallel to the grid, and that'll give you more of a grill temperature if you want to know what you're cooking at. Or if you want more of an ambient temperature, you can do what I did and place a probe straight up vertically. This is going to give you a way of telling the two different types of temperature depending on what you want. If you want that grid temperature or that dome temperature, how you install your probe will help give you the right information to help you inform the decisions that you're going to make for your cook. Speaking of our cook, now that we've covered the ambient temperature, let's move into the food sensor, as well as some of the nuances around how the probe performs for giving you good information about your cook. So how our food interacts with the meter probe, two sensors, whether it's the internal temperature sensor or the ambient temperature sensor, is the third most common question. So to answer or break this into two parts, there's a couple of things that we want to do. One, we want to make sure that we actually pay attention to the little line on the meter probe, which is where we want to insert the probe to. If we are out here, that means we're exposing some of our internal sensor to the ambient air temperature, and we're not going to get a good reading. Likewise, if we go all the way, well, not that you would do this and poke right through to the grill, but we bury our probe way past that line, our ambient sensor is going to be more sensitive to the cooling pocket of our food. And so to illustrate this, I've grabbed one of my kids, freezer packs, but this has to do with, again, probe angle. When we put in cool meat, there's going to be a cool pocket or a bubble around our food. And the best way to avoid that cool bubble is to go in either for that grid temperature where you are parallel to the grid, or go on a 90-degree angle where you are vertical and you're going to get the ambient temperature. What I see often, and people complain about getting bad information, is they take their probe and they put it on, some crazy 40-degree angle or something like that. So where the probe is in on an angle like this. And what that's doing is it's putting your ambient sensor right near this cool piece of meat. So if this is a brisket that just came out of the refrigerator or something like that, the sensor is going to be picking up the cooling bubble on your food. And this is giving you then some bad information. You might think, I need to crank the heat. And so you make some adjustments, you add some more temperature, and when the food finally starts to warm up, all of a sudden you see now your temperatures are spiking. And this is all just becoming coming down to the fact that we didn't place our sensor in a spot that's going to give us an accurate reading. So coming back to before, the best way to manage a cool piece of food and not have that throw off the information that you're seeing in your MEATER app is to go parallel to the grid, where that MEATER probe will be exposed to the heat of the grid and give you the grid temperature, or go straight vertical and just go right to that line, and that will give you still an ambient temperature, but none of the kind of different angles and funny combinations in between, because again, that's just not going to be accurate about what's going on with your food or what's going on inside the grill. And so the final factor with measuring our food temperatures is also depending on the type of food that we are cooking. If we are cooking something like a steak where the temperature is rising quite evenly, it's kind of more like our potato here, where our probe is in and it's getting nice data around it to pull and give us the information. Where I see a lot of other people get confused is on those hero barbecue low and slow cooks, things like a brisket. And that's where the consistency of what we're measuring is not the same as like this potato or a steak, where you've got small little pockets of fat in a steak. In a brisket, you can have rivers of fat and intermuscular tissue running between, say, our flat and our point. And so depending on where we put our probe, that can give you some different information in terms of how the time remaining is calculated. So for example, if we put our probe into our brisket and we go through the point into the flat, but maybe we're in one of those fat pools, when the meat starts to hit the stall, what's happening is that fat is starting to render and become liquid, and we can actually see what looks like our temperature coming backwards. And that will throw off the algorithm of being able to say, hey, we're no longer moving forwards, we're moving backwards. So you can do a couple things here. One, you can go for a spot that is more just meat. So if you're right in the point or you're right in the flat versus that midsection where you're going to be hitting sort of this liquid gold river that is running between our two muscles, that'll give you a little bit more accurate of a calculation. And the other thing to do is just trust your instincts. If you start seeing a calculated time remaining of 3 days or something like that, trust that that's not the case. And once you get through the stall, the algorithm will be able to pick back up your progress and give you an estimated time remaining. The time remaining works really well for those quick cooks, whether it be fish, lamb, steak, chicken, or things like that. When you do the hero cooks like brisket, ribs, or pulled pork or something like that, where you run into the stall, that can be the one thing that can trick the algorithm. So the advice here is trust your instincts, get through the stall, and when you get back into business as usual and you're not all of a sudden having an influx of rendered fat or something like that come across the temperature probe and give it different information, that things will come back to business as usual shortly thereafter and start helping you plan your overall cook times. Now that we've covered the 3 common questions, let's go into our final section of some of the other things that I haven't talked about yet in terms of why I love MEATER, and it's been a great asset to me, and answer the question of would I buy it again. So, do you need to buy a MEATER? No, that's with all these products, you don't need to buy anything, but here's a couple reasons where you may want to or help you evaluate if it's a good fit for you. So there's a couple things that set MEATER apart from the rest for me. First is the types of cooking that it unlocks. So I love cooking on my rotisserie, and here's where a wired solution just goes out the door immediately. So it's the wire would just be wrapped around the spit, in about 30 seconds it'd be pulling the probes out of either the receiver or the food itself. So rotisserie cooking, if that's something that you absolutely love, the MEATER is a great solution. The second reason is the app. And so a year or two ago, the app got a major update, and it was already hands down my favorite app out of any smart thermometer that I've used. But the ability now to take notes and make a comment of what worked well, what you liked, and go back in time and find that cook and say, how long did that brisket take, or how long did that chicken take? If you don't cook something like that all the time, being able to come up with a work back plan based off of, okay, if I want dinner for 5, that means I need to start around 7 in the morning. That'll give me time to get the temperature that I want, plus a couple hour rest. And the app makes this really, really easy to take notes, find your cooks. You can search by brisket, pulled pork, or go back to anything else that you're trying to reference, as well as make notes of what you did, whether it be seasoning or the technique that you cooked it in terms of reverse sear or searing it first and then finishing it later, what have you. The app is a great ally, and perhaps the single best tool that I've had, and I know others in my friends and family circle have had, in terms of helping them understand what's going on inside their grill in terms of the temperature zones, how that impacts the cooks, and how to be more consistent and have repeatable good results and constantly sort of raise that bar in terms of what we're able to produce. And last but not least, which would I buy? I haven't changed my mind here. My favorite is still, the MEATER block. You can do everything that I've shown you today on the entry-level $69 MEATER product. You get a little bit more range and utility with the MEATER Plus, getting up to 165 feet. But for me, the MEATER block is the one to have. So often we have, again, friends, family, different meals going on. Might be doing a chicken, might be doing a steak, might be doing several steaks to several different doneness, what have you. The utility of having those 4 blocks has never ceased to let me down. Plus, every now and then I forget, when I've cleaned the tip and getting ready to charge it, I forget to put it back in. And so even if I'm only using 1 probe, I have 3 more ready to go, because each of those hold about a 24-hour charge. And that's bailed me out a number of occasions where I've cleaned it, left it inside, and forgot to return it back to the block in order to get a charge. So those are a couple of reasons, if you can swing it, to consider looking at a block. If you're looking for a deal, I'll be sure to put a link down below. All those links are affiliate links, so they do help the channel continue to make the content, so no pressure, don't need to buy there. There's plenty of other places you can buy MEATER. But as a thank you for doing that, MEATER shares a 10% discount, so you can get 10% off any of the products in front, and might be something to check out for this holiday, as there's sometimes additional deals on for things like Black Friday. That's it for today, though. I hope you really enjoyed today's video and it helped you make sense of the MEATER lineup and find out which one might be right for you in your barbecue future. If you did, let me know down in the comments and give a thumbs up, and I'll be sure to see you on the next one. That's it for today, though. I'm James from Smokin' Dad Barbecue signing off. Don't be afraid to fire it up.